Hello, I'm Congressmember Judy Chu, Chair Emerita of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or what we call CAPAC. Thank you to APA Justice for inviting me to welcome the Lunar New Year with you. As we begin the Year of the Horse, we renew our energy and focus on the issues that impact our community. Back in 2015, when we saw increasing reports of racial bias and profiling of Asian Americans, including so many Chinese scientists, researchers, and engineers, I put out a call for the community to organize around this issue. The result of that call for community support was the APA Justice Task Force. I am so proud to join you all today because discussions like these, which help educate and mobilize our community, are exactly why AA and HPI civil rights organizations play such an important role in our community. I especially want to thank APA Justice's leaders, including Jeremy Wu, Stephen Pei, and Vincent Wong, who took up my call to action over a decade ago and who continue to be tireless advocates against racial profiling and discrimination. One of the most pressing issues last year, in fact, was the surge in state and federal legislation seeking to restrict land ownership for Chinese and other immigrant communities under the guise of national security. These discriminatory laws harken back to the racist anti Asian policies of the 19th and early 20th centuries that targeted Chinese immigrants and to World War II when Japanese Americans were stripped of their property and incarcerated. A foundational part of the American dream for many of our immigrant families is the ability to purchase a home. And it is unacceptable that Asian Americans and people of Asian descent are faced with unwarranted suspicion and racial profiling by realtors and lenders. That is why just last month I joined Congressman Al Green to reintroduce the Preemption of Real Property Discrimination Act. Our bill would preempt state and local land laws that discriminate based on citizenship or national origin, preventing the use of real estate policies to enable racial profiling and exclusion. I also secured the removal of language from the annual defense spending bill that would have enabled discriminatory land ownership restrictions before it was signed into law. This past year, we were also reminded that even when discriminatory policies are formally ended, the threat of their return remains. We saw this in continued efforts to revive the discredited and xenophobic China initiative. This program disproportionately targeted our communities by setting out to prosecute and convict almost exclusively Chinese and Chinese American scientists for economic espionage. From An Minghu to Gang Chen and so many others, we saw time and time again how baseless accusations were hurled at renowned researchers, turning into protracted legal battles that upended lives and careers. This program was such a failure that only a quarter of the people and institutions charged under the China Initiative were convicted, with nearly all cases having no connection to national security or espionage, but rather paperwork mistakes. So, in partnership with advocates, academics, and organizations, we fought back. Through our combined efforts, the China Initiative was ended under the Biden administration. And this past year, when House Republicans attempted to revive it through government funding legislation, I once again led my CAPAC colleagues to prevent any efforts to revive this racist initiative. But as we look at the road ahead for 2026, we must remain vigilant and ensure that national security is never used as a pretext for racial profiling. And our work is more important than ever because the Trump administration is intent on destroying every ounce of progress our communities have fought for: our diversity, equity, and inclusion, public health, language access, and civil rights. We saw this immediately with President Trump's elimination of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders after 25 years of existence. And that same hostility is playing out through attacks on language access. Language access is a civil right, yet this administration is trying to declare English the official language of America and eliminate all multilingual federal services. This will mean that nearly 1/3 of our community with limited English proficiency could be cut off from federal resources. That is why I led my fellow KPAC members in demanding that the Trump administration rescind its hateful English-only executive order. And I will soon be introducing legislation to guarantee access to translation tools across all federal agencies, because no one should be denied federal assistance simply because English is not their first language. This administration's blatant disregard for our community is also painfully clear in public health. Just last month, HHS Secretary RFK Jr. announced that the CDC would no longer recommend the hepatitis B vaccine, along with other critical vaccines for newborns. This was an utterly reckless decision based on anti-vaccine pseudoscience, and it disproportionately threatens AA and HPIs. That's because while we make up just 7% of the population, we account for 60% of all hepatitis B cases. It's clear that this administration has no regard for the health, safety, or well-being of AA and HPI communities. And that is why, just hours after this decision was announced, I led a letter to the Government Accountability Office urging them to conduct a study on the public health, economic, and equity implications of this decision, urging specific focus on AA and HPI health impacts. More than 100 House Democrats signed this letter, and I'm thrilled that just last week, GAO accepted my request and will be releasing this study later this spring. But on top of all of this, Trump and Secretary Noem's reckless deployment of thousands of masked, untrained ICE agents is terrorizing AA and HPI communities and communities across the country. In just the past 2 weeks, ICE agents shot and killed 2 American citizens in broad daylight, a mother of 3 who was simply trying to drive away, and a defenseless VA nurse who was helping a woman that ICE agents pushed to the ground. Renee Good and Alex Preddy should be alive today. The risk of this despicable violence is especially threatening for our communities. That's because today, 65% of AA and HPIs are immigrants, and ICE agents are rampantly detaining people based on nothing more than how they look or how they speak. These include young children like Yuan Shin. During a routine immigration check-in right before Thanksgiving, Yuan Shin and his father Fei were detained and separated. Fei was sent to a detention center in Florida, while Yuan Min was held by ICE in New York City. The family was reunited just before Christmas, only after Fei agreed to be deported to China in order to be reunited with his child. Unfortunately, Fei and Yuan Shin's story is not unique. In 2025, arrests of Asian immigrants nearly tripled, and 25% of deaths in ICE custody were Asian immigrants. In my district, ICE's recklessness has threatened countless lives and has even resulted in death. When ICE agents tried to kidnap day laborers at a bus stop, one young man tried to take a picture of their license plate, and the ICE agent jumped out of the car and pointed a gun at him, ready to kill him for that. And when ICE conducted a raid outside of a Home Depot in my district, a day laborer was so afraid that he ran onto the freeway and was killed by an SUV. That's why I joined over 100 of my Democratic colleagues in calling for Secretary Noem to be impeached, and I've been pushing for answers, a real investigation and accountability into these avoidable tragedies. I've also introduced H.R. 4667, the Visible Act, to require ICE to take the mask off, identify themselves, and face consequences when they refuse to follow these rules. But even as President Trump and Secretary Noem terrorize immigrant communities with raids, separations, and unchecked violence, I remain focused on advancing real solutions that reflect our values and keep families together. For example, right now, nearly 4 million people with approved green card applications are forced to wait years, if not decades, to reunite with their families. That is why I reintroduced my bill, the Reuniting Families Act, which would finally tackle our decades old visa backlogs by recapturing unused visas, expanding family eligibility, increasing visa caps, and setting firm limits on wait times so families are no longer forced to wait more than 10 years to be together. I want to close by underscoring how important groups like APA Justice are in the path ahead for 2026. Your voices matter, and Congress cannot do this work alone. We've organized against Trump before and will do it again, and together we will defeat his agenda for AANHPIs and all Americans. So thank you again for inviting me today to join your monthly call. I appreciate the leadership this group has taken when the need arose for our community to mobilize years ago, and while it is deeply troubling that those needs continue to grow, I am so grateful to know that APA Justice Task Force remains at the forefront in bringing our community and our allies together to defend our civil rights. Thank you for your leadership, partnership, and commitment to lifting up our communities. Together, we will keep fighting back and keep moving forward this year of the horse.